On Samach Zayin Amar Aleph on the top. The Mishnah all the way right on the top of the block. Samach Zayin Aleph. Hamesis. This is talking about someone who entices other people to avodah zarah. Zehedjit. This is only referring to a mesis, someone who entices others, who himself is a regular person, as opposed to a navi. The Torah mentions this din of enticing other people to avodah zarah in three contexts. It says it about stam a regular person. It says it about doing it for ir hanidachas, to a group of people, and it says it when a navi does it. But so it's machlekes. We're going to see in the Gemara about whether the din of skila. This Mishnah is talking about the din of skila. We've been talking about skila. The Mishnayos are going through the list of things that are mechuyev skila. So there's one mandam who says that the din of skila only applies to a regular person who entices another regular person, but not a navi and not to an ir nidachas. And the other mandam says no, all three of them are going to have a chiyuv skila. So this Mishnah says Hamesis Zehedjit. The Mishnah and the Gemara is going to explain Hamesis as a hedjit. So it's not just that the person who is being mesis is a hedjit, but also the person who is enticing is a hedjit, meaning not a rabbin, not like Yarani Dachas. Omer yesh yir b'makom ploni. How does a person? What is the process by which a person entices other people? He says there's some god somewhere else, because he knows that if he'd say a nearby god, the person would look and see that it's nonsense. He says kach echeles kach shoyse, it eats and it drinks. Kach meitiva kach meiriya, does good for some people, does bad for others, depending if you're good, if you'll do the right thing. If you give money, then it'll be good to you. Kol chai ve'mises shebetoira. So the Mishnah continues. The general rule is that there's no process of entrapment in the Torah. Generally, if there's no edim, we don't get someone to go do the avera again, so that they'll be mechuyev, right? You know, that is what the FBI does. FBI will go to someone and they'll say, "Come, let's go invade the Capitol." And then they'll say, "Oh, you said you're coming to invade the Capitol. We're going to throw you in jail." But we don't have that. If someone is over an avera, we don't say, "Oh, go do it again." The Adam don't say, "Go do it again now with Adam, so that we can get you mechuyev." No such thing. Chutz mizu. This is the only one. And we've seen before other things that a mesis is different than all other yisurim shabbatayra legabi. The dayanim. We said that they usually always look to be matzdik when it comes to a misa, but by mesis, we don't do that. We don't try to find a reason to let them go. Amal shnayim hein edav. So what do? You say to two edim. If he said to two people, he said that let's go be avodah zarah hein edav. Those two edim are the edim. I be an oisel bezdin v'cycle. Then they could take him right away to bezdin and give him skila. Amal echad. But if he said this to one person, he doesn't just say, "Okay, it's only one person. I don't have edus, so let him go. There's nothing to do." What the eid echad is supposed to do? Hu aimer yeshli chaverim roitzim bakach. He says, I have other friends who also might be interested in hearing your spiel about how to go be ovid to become a Mormon. Imhaya aram. But if he's too sharp and he says, "I'm not going to say it over to Eidim, because then I know I'm going to get skila," but he's devious. He says, and he refuses to talk in front of two Eidim. You place Eidim on the other side of a gather, on the other side of a fence, where the instigator kid doesn't see them. And the single aid says to this mesis, "Say over what you told me before," and there's no one listening. So he says it over. He says, "Yeah, let's go be over this avodah zarah." He says back to him, "How can we go be over another avodah zarah? How can we go over avodah zarah and leave the Rabbeinu Shalom? If he's chayzer, then it's okay." Which is I don't understand what that means. I guess a mesis has to really stick to his guns. Even though we're saying we don't give him a break at all, a mesis, right? We're saying we still give him one chance. After he says, let's go be Oived Avodah Zarah, you say, how can we leave the Rebbeinu Shalom? And if he's chayzer, then we let him off the hook. So that's what the Mishnah says. He's not, I guess, to be a mesis and to be a Oived, you have to stick to it. If the person backs off, if you give him a chance, he gets relieved. We're on Samach Zayin and Aleph in the Mishnah. If he could persist and he says, no, this is what we're required to do in order to be over this avodah zara, it's good for us. Then the Edom on the other side of the fence that he can't see, they could see him, but he can't see them. They take him to Bezdin and they testify, and he gets skila. Someone who says, I'm going to be Ovid, meaning we're talking about, Rashi says this is talking about someone who's being who's instigating, who's a mesis. So if he says, I'm going to be Ovid and you should come be Ovid with me, Eilech ve'Avoid, or if he says a Lashon Rabim, let us go and be Ovid, Neilech ve'Navid, let us, or Eilech, I'm going to go and someplace else and do the Avoid, and Neilech ve'Navid, let us go together and be Navid. Or he said this Lagabi Ezbach, Eilech, Ezbach, he said, I'm going to go bring a carbon, Eilech ve'Ezbach, let us go and Shecht, Neilech ve'Ezbach will go together, Aktir, or he says, I'm going to burn something for the Avodah Zarah, Eilech ve'Aktir, I'm going to go burn something, Neilech ve'Aktir should go together to be Maktir, Ensach, I'm going to pour something out, Eilech ve'Enzach, I'm going to go somewhere and pour something out, Neilech ve'Nechsach will go together, Ishtachava, I'm going to bow down, Eilech ve'Ishtachava, I'm going to go somewhere and bow down. Let us go. This is all the things that we saw in the original Mishnah about being Oived Avodah Zarah, right? We saw that you have to do if you're not doing the avodah of that particular carbon, of that particular Avodah Zarah, it has to be one of the avodas in the Beis Hamikdash, or right. So the first thing is I'll do this Avodah Zarah with its typical avoid, and the other things are the avoids in the Beis Hamikdash or Shtachava, we can mechiv regardless of whether that's the avoid. And if he says any of these lashonis, either I'm going to do it, or I'm going to go somewhere and do it, or let us go together and do it, which is indistinct. We're going to see later on, Lagabi, in the next Mishnah later on, the Yamid, about someone who's by an Irani Dachas, he's convincing people to join an Irani Dachas. There he has to say, let us go. It has to be a Lashon Rabbah. Zaknamar. Hamesis zehedit. The Mishnah says the mesis is chai. The first thing it says, the mesis is a hedjit. Time of the hedjit, hanavi b'chanek. What's coming to tell you is that only, we're talking about the din skila. The Mishnah is continuing for the whole parak. We've been talking about the din skila. That's only if it's a hedjit. But a Navi is brought separately in the pasuk. If a Navi convinces people to go to Avodah Zarah, he gets chanek. He's not included in the skila. But mesis is a hedjit, and someone who, the Mishnah continues and it says, someone who entices people. It talks about it. It's only mesis a hedjit. Time to yochid harabim b'chanek. Again, it's only if he entices one person. But if he entices a rabbim, then it's b'chanek. I don't think it means more than one person, because we said if he tried to entice two Edom, he's going to be chayiv. What it means is if he's trying to entice an entire city, then it's included in the din of which the Torah brings of someone who tries to convince a whole city. That's not included in the din of mesis that gets skila.
Chanek is worse than skila, right?
No, skila is worse than chanek.
Why do you get more of a kacha?
Kacha, right? That means you're right. Theoretically, it's much worse to be. But the point is that the Torah gave a din of mesis, and this person is not included in that din of mesis that gets skila. I mean, you say the same thing about a Navi. You think a Navi would be worse than a regular person. So, Tamar Masisa Manir of Shemini, the Tanya, Navi Shehidiach Beskila. A Navi, even the Mishnah says, the Rabbanan say, Navi that convinces other people to be Avodah Zarah gets skila just like any other. Shimon says, no, the Torah said mentioned the Navi separately, so therefore it does, and it doesn't say skila there. It say machlekes. The guy someone who's mediach and ir and yidachas. You say it gets skila. It's not any different. Certain, like you could say, like Menachem was suggesting, the Rabbanan would say, it's a kal v'chaymer. Certainly, if someone convinces an individual person, or an individual convinces an individual person, he gets skila. So certainly a Navi who does so, and certainly someone who convinces the whole city. Rav Shimon disagrees. He says b'chenek. In fact, Amos Sefer. What about the next Mishnah? It's coming up in a few lines. And that's referring to someone who is convincing people to, like the Gemara is going to say, is convincing some people to be an ir nidachas. It's talking about nelich v'navid avodas kechavim. Let us go and be out avodas kechavim. It said, the Mishnah says it has to be a lashon rabim from reviewed rab medicha nidachas shanu. That's talking about medicha ir nidachas, and we're saying it gets skila. Etin l'Rabbanan. That's l'chay Rabbanan. Reisha Rav Shimon v'sefer Rabbanan. So it comes out. There's this our Mishnah on the top of the Amid is Rav Shimon, and this second Mishnah on the Amid, which is really continuation, is the Rabbanan. Ravina Amar Kul Rabbanani. Ravina says no. The whole Mishnah is Rabbanan. V'loizu afsuk tani. Ein echanami. When it says hamediach hamesis zehedyet, it doesn't mean to say that it's only if the person is a hedyet and not a navi. It's even if he's a navi, but it's saying. First, the Mishnah says hamesis if he's a hedjed is chayiv, and then it says even if he's a navi, even if he's even if the Mishnah says first it's only if he's mesis to an individual, and then the Mishnah continues and says even if he's mesis to an ir nidachas. But we still have the problem. What about the navi? That's the navi, the part of the navi in the Mishnah. That's Reb Shimon. The first part of the Mishnah, where it says it's not a navi, doesn't mean that it's not a navi. When it says mesis is a hedyet, lachmana, it's talking about legabi that he's a hedyet. That means we treat him like a hedyet. That we don't give him the benefit of that. Normally the Torah doesn't go with entrapment. This person is the bottom of the barrel, and he gets entrapped, like the Mishnah explains. And now this Bryce is just going to say this, what we said in the Mishnah of how the process of entrapment works that we do for a mesis. V'shakol chayve detanya. V'shakol chayve misu shebet any other capital crime in the Torah, ein machmin aleh. We don't entrap him chutz mizu except for this of the mesis. Ketzad oiseloi. What do we do for him? Madlikin lo yasaner bebeisa baisa pnimi. At night, you bring him into a room inside the house. And you put Adam in a different room that he can't see them. They could see him, but he can't see them. They could see him and hear what he's saying, because otherwise they won't be good Adam. He doesn't know that they're there. Say again what you told me earlier, where you said I should try to go to Avodah Zarah. And he says it then. He has to confirm. He's saying you want me to leave the Rebbeinu Shalom and go be over Avodah Zarah. If he says no, that's not what I meant. I meant something else. He says no. We should go be over Avodah Zarah. This is what you have to do for this Avodah Zarah, and it's going to provide us these benefits. They bring him to Bezin and they give him skila. I guess you have to ask him, you mean for us to leave the Rebbeinu Shalom? Because even though we try to entrap him, we have to confirm that that's what he means. We have to be very, very clear that what he's suggesting is that being Avodah Zarah, he doesn't mean something else. He doesn't mean he means it's like a self-help process. Who knows what it is? So you have to tell him you mean say karachal bitchaktana that you want to be Avodah Zarah. So the Mishnah. Hamediach is the one who says, let's go and be Avodah Zarah. And we're going to explain that means that's talking about in ir and idachas. So therefore it says when he has to say a lashon rab. Hamachashav. Now the Mishnah moves on to the number of kshafim, kishaf machas. Machashav oisa ma'isa chayiv. It's only chayiv for kishaf if he does a ma'isa. and not someone who does sleight of hand and convinces people that he's doing kishuf, but he's not really doing it. Even though we saw before, ma'inin includes someone who does sleight of hand, that's not the same thing as machashef. Machashef is to do sorcery. Ma'inin, I think, is someone who's convincing, like he's using sleight of hand to convince them of Avodah Zarah or of Shadim. So I think that's a different thing than machashef. Machashef, if you say I'm doing magic, and he does a sleight of hand, he's not going to be chayiv misa. It's still going to be also, like we're going to see later on, but he's not chayiv misa. Rekiva oimem mishum, not chayiv skila specifically. Rekiva oimem mishum b'bishua, shnayim loiktim kishua, and two people who are gathering cucumbers, echad loiket, potter ve'echad loiket chayiv. There's one person who gathers it using kshafim, who's going to be potter, and there's one who's going to gather it, who's going to be chayiv. If he's doing if he's actually collecting the cucumbers through kishuf, he's going to be chayiv skila. But if he just makes it appear that he's doing it, then he's going to be potter avalos. Like we said, the first part of the Mishnah, let's go do a b'lashon rab. That's talking about someone who's trying to convince people to be an ir hanidachas. Tanarabah, machshefa, echad ish ve'echad ish includes both men and women. Imke maltam elem machshefa. Why does he use the lashon nekeva? Normally would use the lashon zachar. Nesharoy nashim mitzuyis b'chshafim. It says most women are found with kishuf. I think it means maybe most non-Jews, most non-Jews do kishuf at that time, I guess.
That popular.
I guess so. Misasim b'ma.
That was a mistake. Most kishuf makers are women.
Not a mistake. I'd rather say it means that the goyim at that time. Misasim b'ma. What is that? Misa basically, I'm a nemer kan machshefa loisachaya v'nemer alon zchaya kol neshama. It says loisachaya by machshefa, and it says loisachaya kol neshama. That's talking about in Eretz Canaan. It said you have to kill everyone because they're all involved in kishuf. So you see that the einish for kishuf, and it says over there that you have to stone them. Malalam b'sayif. I'm sorry that you're not b'sayif, not b'skila, but b'sayif. That the anshe, the way they killed everyone in Canaan was with they beheaded them. They went to war with swords. So avkan b'sayif. So too machshefa gets sayif. Keep on nemer kan machshefa loisachaya. It says by Har Sinai, it says that the Yidden and the animals cannot approach the Har, and if they do so, they're going to get skila. Ma'alam b'skila. So just like by Har Sinai, it says skila afkam b'skila. So that's a machlokes, whether it's Rabbi Yossi Agula says b'sayev, Rabbi Kippur says b'skila. Amalei Rabbi Yossi, ani danti loisachayim loisachayim. I learned from loisachayim that it says by Knan. It's the same exact word about the Dante L'Sachayim and Lo Yichya. It's a slightly different word. Why don't you learn like Misayif instead of Yichya? Amalei Rabbi Kiva. Ani Dante Yisrael Mi Yisrael. The din of Har Sinai was talking about the Yidden, and so talking over here about the Chiyuv for Kisha for a Yid. Shriba Nakasa Misas Harbe. There are many different Misas for a Yid. The only Misa that you ever have by Avdei Kechavim is Sayif. So don't learn out which Misa you get from Avdei Kechavim, where they only get one Misa, rather to take from the Yidden where we have it, like, even though it's Leisachai and Yechia, because there's a specific Misa there. So we would learn out that it means the same Misa that it says by Yisrael. It says a machshefa you shouldn't keep alive, and it says whoever is born a behema gets killed. He learns out from a different source, like Rabbi Kiva, that it's going to be mechuyev skila. You learn it out from born a behema. Because the two things are next to each other, that's a reason to be mechayev skila. Yes, I'll learn it out from a different source. Oivi Yadaini was included in machshef, and it's a kind of kishuf. Why was it excluded? It's coming to tell you that they both get skila. Why do you say that since the Torah said Yudayni gets skila, and then it says Machshefa gets skila, and it's doubled? That's coming to tell you that every kishuf gets skila. Say that it's
doesn't. We don't know what the halakha.
He's saying we shouldn't be able to learn it out. We're saying he learned out. Avidani was b'chlam machshefa, and it says by that, and it says Avidani separately that it gets skila. So he says, why did it have to say Avidani separately? It must be to tell you that not just Avidani, but every machashef gets skila.
That's okay.
So Rabbi Yehuda asked, it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't learn it out. It's shnei ksuvna banka echad. Chol ksuvna banka echad ein melamdin. Right? Havalei lemichtav chad oy oiv oyedayni v'lishtek. Just say, why do you say oiv yedayni? Don't say double two things that it says skila. Why do you say double? Amar of Chaya, Ada Amra, from this we can see, because Rabbi Yehuda Shnei Ksuvna banka echad melamdin. There's always a machlekes about whether Shnei Ksuvna banka echad is melamdin or not. So this is the raya that Rabbi Yehuda holds taka that Shnei Ksuvna banka echad you can learn. The fact that we doubled it by Oiv Yadaini is to tell you that it's not to say that you can't learn out from everyone else, but rather to say that you should learn it out to every machashev. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Lama nikra shmank shafim. Why are they called kshafim? Because keshev can undo or can withstand it contradicts what the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom has a plan, and with keshev you do differently. So Gemara, the pasuk says there's no one besides Hashem. Amar Chanina, I feel that even kshafim doesn't mean that keshev can withstand. It can somehow do different than what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants. But it means that what it means is that when the Rebbeinu Shalom al piderech hateva, he has a plan that this is what should happen, or that a person should be zeicha to something. Can Kishuf, redirect it? Is this the way the Rebbeinu Shalom made the world, that it can undo what the person's gzeira was? So Rav Chanina says that even that kshafim have no power to undo the Rebbeinu Shalom gzeira. The Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't allow it. Says Ma'ai, it's a dahavaka mahadara la mishkal afra mitusikara de Rav Chanina. She was looking to gather dust from underneath Rav Chanina. She wanted to use it, like to do voodoo with it against Rav Chanina. Amma la imistayis zili avidi. If you want, go ahead and take it. Einayin milvadik sit. He said, I'm not worried about your kishuf. It's not going to affect me, because the pasuk says Einayin milvadik. The Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't allow it to affect me. This is a steer about what we originally said, that it does have the ability to overturn the Rebbeinu Shalom gzeirus. So Shani Rav Chanina did not say, no, Rav Chanina, who's a tzaddik, it doesn't. In that case, it can't. Maybe for a regular person, it can redirect the Rebbeinu Shalom's gzeira, but not for a tzaddik. Amar Ebu Bar Nigri, Amar Kiya Bar Abba. B'lotehem. Sometimes the pasuk use the word lotehem by Paroi when he used his kishuf machas. It uses lotehem without a hay. Elu ma'aser shedim. Lotehem with the hay. Elu ma'aser kshafim. That's talking about kishuf. Demons is separate from kishuf. Kishuf is where you do things directly, and shedim is where you get shedim to do your bidding. When it says with the hay, the Rebbeinu Shalom put a sword that was swinging by the door to Gan Eden to stop anyone from coming in. There was no shadim involved. It was just the sword on its own. So that's with the hay. Amra, which is kishuf. Amra Abaye, the cup and amana, shade, someone who needs to use a utensil, that's using demons, the like cup and amana kshafim. Magic that's done without a utensil, that's kishuf. Amra Abaye. Hilchos kshafim kehilchos Shabbos. Halachas of kshafim are similar to Hilchos Shabbos. Yesh mehem beskila, v'yesh mehem poter avalasa, v'yesh mehem mutar lechatchila. Just like Shabbos, there's some things that you get skila from. If you do that in some things you poter avalasa, and some things the mutar lechatchila, that means right. If someone is over on a malacha deraisa, it's chayiv skila, and some things is poter avalasa, the rabbanon. There's some things that it's not chayiv, it's not a malacha, but the chamim asarit, and some things are entirely mut. So, and the same thing by kishuf. Oisem ma'isa beskila. Someone who does it, like our Mishnah said, if he actually does kishuf, he gets something done, he gets skila. Someone who just a sleight of hand is potter avalasa. But mutar chatchila, they're chanina ravoshi, and where is kishuf mutar altogether? Like chanina ravoshi. Kamali Shabsa, we ask him Hilchos Yitzira, Mibilu Igla Tilsa, Achlile. Like we brought this earlier, every Shabbos they would learn Hilchos Yitzira, and they would summon these fattened the third calf born to its mother, which is the best calf, and they would eat it for Shabbos. That's entirely mutter. That's not kishuf. That's using the keiches that the Rebbeinu Shalom allows people who are well above us to use. Amar Vashi, I saw the father of Kana, the Nafitz B'Shadi Kricha L'Shirayim Menachirah, that he sneezed and he expelled pieces of silk from his nostrils. I guess he was also using kishuf. I don't know what we're supposed to learn from that. The Chatumim said to Para, we can't do the kinim, we can't do the lice, because that's the finger of God. Amar of Alaza, because the shade they were using the kishuf of a shade. They used staffs, I guess. So it can't create something that's less than a barley. They can't create anything. It's just that they can summon these things, and they can only summon something large, but a lice is too small for it to summon. Amalei Rebbe. So if you remember this, when you get to this in the Haggadah, you could surprise your kids about what was going on, that the Chatumim didn't have enough kayach to summon the lice. Amalei Rebbe Ravler of Chia. I saw the sailor, the Shaklei L'Safira, the guy de Legamla. He took a knife and he cut apart a gamel v'taraflei v'tavla, and he called it with a bell, become, and it reconstituted itself. Amalei said to him, "But lebasar hachidam uparsan mihavoi, was there any bloods and innards? If he cut it open, cut it apart, and then put it back together, there would have been blood that came out when you first cut it apart. Was there any blood on the ground? It was the famous trick, right, where you put a woman in a box and you cut it in half. It was just sleight of hand. Ziri iklal al-Achsandr Samatshayim. He came to Achsandr Samatshayim, Zavan Chamra. He bought a donkey. Hitamela Ashkuya Maya, when he brought it to drink water, Pasha become Gamladus Ganisa. It disappeared and it stood in its place a block of wood. They had used sorcery to make this block of wood turn into a gummel. When it was exposed to water, it disappeared. Like the Wicked Witch. Right? The Wicked Witch, when she was exposed to water, she melted. So that's what happened to sorcery. That's where it was right. Frank Baum was a Jewish guy. He knew this halacha. Amulei ilav zeiriat le'ava madrinanlach. They told him, you're zeiri, you're a very kosher person. We're going to give you your money back. You should have realized that it's possible it's a fake gummel or a fake donkey. Everyone knows you have to test with water anything you buy in Alexandria. They're full of zima, they're full of kishuf, and this is a standard practice. If you test it with water, you really lost your chance. But because of you, it will be nice. Yana came to a certain inn, Amalhu Ashken Maya, said, give me some water, krevu shasisu, and they brought to him some shasisu, a type of drink. So that the woman who handed it to him, her lips were moving, and he was chayshish that there was some kishuf going on. Shada parvasa minei, He poured a little bit out. Have an akravi. It was scorpions. He said to her, listen, I drank a little bit of yours. He made believe he drank a little. At the Nami Shasamadi, you should drink some of mine. Ashkaya, Havoi Chamra. And she drank it and she turned into a donkey. He had put the Sefer Yetzirah, or maybe it was a guy, he did his own tishuf, and he made this, he put some kind of spell on this drink, and it turned her into a donkey. Rachva, and he was riding on her. She was his new donkey. Salgla Shukri, he went down to the market. Asachavata Pashrala, and her Chavreirim, her fellow witches, saw this and they dispelled the spell. They took away the spell. And it turned out, so he was all of a sudden, he found himself riding on a woman in the shuk. What's the purpose of the story? I don't know. Draw your own conclusions.
It's a good basis for all the fairy tales that came out of it centuries later. Like, this. It's
100% true. I really believe what I said about the Wizard of Oz. That the basis of that was like this Gemara, or this Gemara, this idea that water dispels sorcery. You don't remember that? You never heard of Wizard of Oz?
I'm convinced that the Wizard of Oz predates the Gemara.
It could be. But Tal had Sradeya, but the Chas Eretz Mitzrayim, it says that Sradeya covered over Eretz Mitzrayim. Amr Rabba Lazar Sradeya Achas Chayis. It was one Svadeya, and it increased. It had a bunch of babies, and it filled the whole Mitzrayim. Katanoia, this is Machlokas Kiva Mitzvadei Achas Haisa Malachal Mitzrayim. It says the same thing. Amalei Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah Kiva Malcha Eitzel Haggadah. Kala Midivrei Berisecha Olech Eitzel Negayim V'Oyehalas. You don't belong saying these type of things. Agadata. You should stick to halacha. Svadeya Achas Haisa Shakalahem V'Heim Bo. This Svadeya called. It made a call and it called all the other ones, and they came. Nothing, not saying the shot that we all are familiar with from Chumash and from the Haggadah, that every time he hit it, it doubled. So tomorrow, Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Yeshua Gamallah. In the Mishnah it says that Rabbi Kiva heard from Rabbi Yeshua that if two people were collecting kishuim and one was doing it with actual magic, and one was doing it with sleight of hand, only the one that does actual magic gets skila. Did he really hear this from Yeshua about Tanya? Shechala Rebbe Eliezer. When Rebbe Eliezer was sick, Nichnasu Rebbe Kiva Chaver Levakra. Rebbe Kiva and his Chaverim went to visit him. Hu Yoshev Bekinov Shaloi. He was sitting in his canopy. Behin Yoshev Mitarakal Shaloi, and they were sitting a little bit far away. They were concerned that he wasn't well. In addition, Rebbe Eliezer was had been put into Cherem, so they didn't really want to come that close to him. It was Erev Shabbos. Nichnas Hyrcanus b'noi lachos tefillah. Hyrcanus, the son of Reb Elazar, came to take off his tefillin before Shabbos. Gar by b'yatza ben Nazifa. He said, "Go away," and he left. He said, "I think Hyrcanus said, I think Reb Elazar's." He's not in his right mind because he's telling me not to take off tefillin before Shabbos. And we know that there's no key of tefillin on Shabbos, and therefore one is not supposed to put them on. So Rebbe Elazar said he heard this. He said, "No, you're the ones who are wrong. How could you leave over the Isser Skila that it's coming close to Shabbos, and you were all involved with me, busy because I was sick, and instead, so you didn't take care of getting ready for Shabbos, of lighting the neiros, and you're going to miss Shkia. Better you should do that before Shabbos and not worry so much about my tefillin. That's only Isser Shus, it's only the Rabbanon. Since they saw that he was in his right mind, they said Daled Amos away from him. So Rebbe Elazar asked him, "Why'd you come?" They said, "We came to learn Torah." Why didn't you come until now? We didn't have time. So Rashi had said that they said 4 amos away because of the nidik, and he said, and they said he didn't have time. But the real reason they had stayed away was because of the nidik. They didn't want to come near. He said, I don't. I have my doubts of whether you're going to have a regular misa because of what you did, that you didn't come to learn from me. You missed out your chance to learn. Amaloi Rabbi Akiva Shali Mahu. What is going to be my end? Amaloi Shalach Kashem Mishalahen. You're going to get worse than them. So Rashi says that because Rabbi Akiva had greater potential. It's very fascinating. Shalach Kashem Lahem Neishalibcha Pasuach Ka'olam. Your heart is as big as the world. You have so much potential. You see, Lama Torah Harbe. You could have learned more. So he said, Rabbi Akiva, you're going to get a worse end, which taka is what happened. Rabbi Akiva ended up, what was one of that Sarah Haruge Malchus, he got a terrible misa. And that was because had he gone to Rabbi Elazar, he could have learned even more. He put his two hands over his chest. This is like two Sifrei Torah that are wrapped up. So this is, he said that I had so much Torah to teach and I didn't get the chance. I learned much Torah and I taught much Torah. When I learned from my Rabbanim, it didn't even accomplish to me that I became like the amount that I absorbed was not even comparable to what a dog would lick up from the yam. That's how much Torah I know compared to my Rabbanim. And the amount of Torah that I taught did not take away from me like when they stick a tube into to remove something, it only takes a tiny bit out. So the amount of Torah that I learned, I still remained with so much more than I had. I taught 300 halachas, legabe a certain type of mitzvah. No one ever asked me about it. 300 or 3,000 halachas. The Netias Kishuin, the halachas of Netias Kishuin. No one ever asked him about except for Akiva and Yosef. These are the halachas that we had said in the Mishnah about Kishuf, using Kishuf to learn about Kishuin. We were walking on the way. Teach me about planting Kishuin. And I taught him one thing. I told him some kind of Kishuf, Sefer Yetzirah, that it caused the Kishuin to grow in the Sada. You told me how you could create them with Sefer Yetzirah. Teach me how to cut them. And I taught him one thing. They all gathered at one place. These are all different types of things that are covered with leather. So the question is, when they're covered with leather, are they considered to be a kli? Because a leather kli that carries things is considered a kli, but these are permanently around it. Are they considered to be a kli l'gabi kabatum? Amalahen heim tmein. They are tamei. Betaros on bema shehein. Bema. I'm sorry. And you matar them the way they are. If they're opened up, you just dunk them like that.
Put the things inside.
Yeah, right. But if you take it out, then it's a new kli. Minal shal gabe ha'amas. If you have a shoe that's on top of the shoe form, so it's ready to be taken off. So it's covering the shoe form, but it's not really meant to stay like that. Mahu avlen hu tar. It's tar. It's not considered to be a kli. At that point, he died. The nether is hutar. He was going from Kisri Lud until his blood fell on the ground. Pasach alav b'shura Amru Avi Rechav Yisrael Parashav Haber Mei Shieshli Be'enli Shulchani L'Hartzoisen. I have many hundreds, and I don't have my, what does this mean? I don't have where to. I have so much Torah to ask you. I don't have who to ask it to. You see that he learned about these halachas from Eliezer, not from Yeshua, like the Mishnah said about Yeshua. He didn't understand when he heard it from Eliezer. How the Gomer of Yeshua asked, but Yeshua explained it. It's someone who did teach. How could he do this? How could he have done? We're going asking, how did he create all these kishuim? He was using kishuf. It's like, no, it's a chayiv l'Islam, it's shani. Even though he did the kishuim, he was doing it just to teach him. You can't teach someone how to do kishuf and just to teach him what to do, but if you have to show him the halacha, then you could do so. Thank you. We made it to the end.